Okay, in this screencast, I'm going to walk you through the process of making a change to mathlib, the mathematics library for the lean theorem prover, and then making a pull request, that is, sending your changes along for us to review and hopefully incorporate into mathlib. So here I have a completely fresh install of lean on this machine, and I'm going to walk you through everything we need to do. To get started, I just want to make sure that Git is configured properly, because we'll be using Git quite a lot. Now, by default, you might find that Git uses a Baroque editor called Vim, and one of the first things we want to do is change that. So let's just inspect what's going on there. I'm going to type git config --global --edit, which tells Git that I would like to edit its global configuration file. And sure enough, it arrives in the scary world of Vim. The only thing I know about Vim is that you're meant to press :Q enter to escape. Okay, so what we're going to do instead is type git config --global core.editor, and then we're going to write code --new window --wait. And this will instruct Git to use Visual Studio Code as the editor when it needs an editor. And with that set, let's try again to edit the configuration file. That looked great. Okay, you can see the setting that we just made, the editor, but the important thing that we still need to do here is we need to set our name and our email address, because these will be attached to any commits that we make to mathlib. And it's important to remember to uncomment those lines once we've set them, and then hit save, and we can close the VS Code window. Okay, great. With those preliminaries out of the way, let's get a copy of mathlib and have a look around to decide what we want to change. So I'm going to maybe work in my documents directory. You can work wherever you like. And I'm going to use lean project, which is the Swiss Army knife for managing copies of mathlib or other projects that use lean. So we're just going to type lean project get mathlib to obtain a copy. It's cloning something from GitHub for us. And all of that's done is created a local directory called mathlib. I'm going to go into that directory, which is an important step, and then I'm just going to run code dot to open the current folder in Visual Studio Code. Now, something that you might not have noticed, but you might have had trouble with, is that Visual Studio Code and lean will not work if you just open an individual lean file, or at least it won't work well. You really have to open the whole folder, which you can either do through the File Open menu or from the command line, as I did then. In any case, we now have a copy of mathlib with all of its contents here, and so let's start having a look around. I'm going to dig through a little bit, maybe drop into the category theory library, and go off and look at the file about initial and terminal objects in a category. Now, some things pop up. There's the lean info view, which tells us about the correctness or otherwise of our file. But since I'm just looking around for now, let me kill that. And let's go down here and quickly try and understand what's in this file. It has a class called hasTerminal, and this is to represent a specified choice of terminal object in a category. And then a little bit later, it has a definition terminal, which lets us extract that particular chosen object. So you could write terminal space vec or something to obtain the zero-dimensional vector space, something like that. There's also some notation. You can see here that we can write that funny symbol as /top. We use it all over the place in mathlib to represent the top element of a lattice, and it seemed natural for terminal objects as well. The thing I'm going to notice, however, is that this definition here, terminal, for extracting the terminal object, doesn't have a docstring. A docstring is just a comment like this that begins with /-- and that's horrible because we want docstrings on everything in mathlib. It makes things easy to use. And so I think I've decided that our first ever pull request to mathlib is going to be to add a missing docstring. We could just jump in here and start editing, but in the long run, that's actually going to be a little bit of a hassle, because if you notice, we're working here on the master branch of mathlib. And if we make changes here, we're going to have to later work out how to move those changes over to a branch and so on. And I think it's going to be cleaner and easier if we just start fresh on a new branch. So to do that, I'm going to show you how to do that using Lean Project. So I'm going to close VS Code. I'm going to go back outside of my mathlib directory, and I'm going to run Lean Project again. This time I'm going to use get -b, which asks Lean Project to check out a branch, although this branch actually doesn't exist at the moment. But Lean Project is clever enough that it should create it for us. Okay, if we type ls, we'll now see we've got another directory, mathlib_terminal_doc. You can, of course, just work in a single directory where you switch between branches using the git checkout command, but sometimes it's also easier to just have a separate directory for each branch that you're working on. Okay, so let's go into here, run git code to fire up Visual Studio, and this time, hopefully, we will see that we are on the branch terminal doc. Great. Let's navigate back to that file. It was called terminal.lean. To get there, I pressed Command P to bring up this little menu to open a file by name. And again, let's get rid of that info view. Scroll down to where we want to work and start writing the docstring. Let's say something about the notation. And let's say something about the mathematical characterization of this definition. Great. It's important to remember when writing, it's very important when writing docstrings to use the right syntax, /-. But otherwise, I was going to say it's important that you try and make your explanation quite self-contained. These bits of text will appear in the online documentation. They'll also appear in tooltips that pop up when someone hovers their mouse over the word terminal. So it's helpful if they can be read in isolation. Since we've written that docstring, and almost the same thing applies to the definition for an initial object, let's copy and paste. And just for the sake of realism, I'm going to forget to change the word from to there, and we'll see how that gets handled later on in the process. Okay, let's save our change and open a terminal. I'm just going to open the terminal within VS Code, so I don't have to switch back. I can type git status, which tells me that there is one file not yet staged for commit. So I can either at this point type git add and either the file name or maybe just git add dot. Another alternative is I can do git commit -a, which will just add all modified files to the commit we're making. I'd encourage you to use git commit -am and then specify a message. If you don't specify the message on the command line, Git will pop up an editor for you to write the message. Now, we have a sort of standard format for commit messages, which keeps everything manageable. But if you don't know exactly what to do, just give it your best shot and we'll clear it up in the review process. But I guess what I meant to write is category theory /terminal add doc strings. Pull requests that add doc strings are a great way to get started because everyone is going to be very happy with you. Okay, we've made our commit, and pretty much our next step is to send it along to GitHub. Now, we need to just pause at this step because we don't have permission to push a local branch to the mathlib repository on GitHub. But we're a pretty happy and welcoming community, and we'll just give you that permission. So the thing to do is to fire up your web browser and head along to leanprover.zulipchat.com. You'll need to log in. I think it's actually quite convenient to log in with your GitHub account. And here you'll see the Zulip chat. So I think the right thing to do is to probably go to the new members stream where everyone tries to be extra helpful, and you can create a new topic, and you can write something like permission to push to GitHub, and then just write a quick message introducing yourself, explaining that you'd like to make a pull request. Let's see. Just asking if someone could give permission. Let's see. Johan's replied very quickly. I better tell him my username. I guess Johan already knew it. Excellent. Okay, I'm not actually going to jump across to my email to click on that invitation email because I'm not logged into my email on this virtual machine, but you can imagine how that step goes. Follow the obvious links. Once you've done that, let's jump back over to Visual Studio Code and push our changes up to GitHub. Now, Git warns us that this branch doesn't yet exist on the upstream on GitHub, and it suggests that this command will magically make that happen. So let's copy and paste that command. And since this is the very first time that we're pushing something to GitHub, we need to do some signing in, and happily VS Code manages all that for us. I'm just going to click continue and accept and so on to give all these authorizations. And at the end of that process, and a moment later, it reports that it's done and helpfully gives us directly the URL with which we can create a new pull request. So let's command click on that link. It will fire up our web browser and open a new pull request. So everything looks pretty good here. The title for the pull request follows the usual format. Although if you can't get that right, don't worry, we can fix it for you. You can put a comment here, just adding some doc strings. If you have anyone in particular who you would like to have review your changes, you can select their names there, but it's not necessary. Someone will come along. You can, underneath the labels here, add a variety of different labels. Usually the thing you want to add is request review, which says that you'd like someone to come along and have a look at it. You can also use the work in progress or help wanted label if you've got something that's not quite complete, but you'd still like to have some other people look at it for you. Okay, it's very useful, I think, when making any pull request to scroll down to the bottom and look at the list of changes that GitHub has detected and just make sure that everything looks sane. You've included the things you wanted to include and you haven't included spurious things. But then after you've done that, you can find the big green button and click Create Pull Request. Okay, so it's been assigned a number now. We're number 3338. And if we go back to the main pull requests page, it'll be there at the top of the list, along with everything else that's going on at the moment. As you can see, things are usually quite busy. We've got 60 open pull requests at the moment, and you can see that most of the first page here were, well, at least the first 10 there are all newly created today. So things do move along quite quickly. Okay, let's go make ourselves a cup of coffee and see what happens after that. Something that's worth noticing on this pull request page after we've created actually is that there are some automatic checks which are being run here by continuous integration. So this is doing a few different things. It's both checking that everything compiles correctly and all of the mathematics still works. It's running the linter to do some stylistic checks. And it's also building olean files, which are the compiled versions of lean files. And a really nice feature is that once that's finished, we'll actually be able to download those to our local machine in order to avoid having to recompile all of mathlib ourselves. Okay, it looks like Patrick has jumped in and made a review very promptly for us. He has identified actually that in the comment we copied and pasted and didn't change the from to a to. So he's actually made a suggested change here, which means that there's a way we can automatically commit his suggestion, but instead I'm just going to show you the process of going back to VS Code and doing it ourselves. Let's jump back to VS Code, scroll down, find that from, and change it to a to. Again, hit save, go back to the terminal and do another commit. Subsequent commits beyond the first one don't need to have commit messages following the format. You can just write whatever you like. So I'm just going to write changes from review and then git push. And that sends it back up to GitHub. If we now go back to our web browser, Safari, and reload this page, we can go down, I guess we can go up and use the Files Changed tab. We can see that we've changed the word from to, so everything's good. And going back to the conversation view, we can say to Patrick, thanks, fixed, and then send that comment. I think it's always helpful if you click the Resolve Conversation buttons. It lets other reviewers know that that issue has been dealt with. If you're not sure whether it's been resolved or not, please just say so and ask for further suggestions. Now, it's quite common when a reviewer comes along and makes suggestions that they will change the label from request review to changes requested, and if you've dealt with all of the requests, you can change it back, I think, to request review to ask for another round. But a reviewer will almost certainly come and do that for you. Okay, that looks good. We just need to wait some more. Oh, and a different reviewer has jumped in. Johan has arrived, and he has written Boar's merge, which is a bit of a strange incantation, but it is an instruction to our build robot that this pull request is all ready to go. And here the robot jumps in, it removed the request review label, added the ready to merge label, and there's now nothing more to do. That robot will wait to see that all of the checks succeed, and after that it will merge it with master, and anyone else coming along and getting a copy of mathlib will then have the new version with the changes that you've contributed. If anything goes wrong in this process, please just ask in the comment thread on GitHub or jump over to Zulip to ask your questions. You'll find actually down the bottom here, there's a stream PR reviews where you can create a new topic it's helpful if you put the pull request number in there, and you can start more complicated, lengthy discussions about the progress of a pull request if that becomes required. I guess that's pretty much all there is to it. That was an unusually quick pull request process. One more thing, if we go back across to VS Code, we should be able to use lean project now to ask it to go and retrieve the precompiled Erlang files that continuous integration is built remotely. So the command for that is lean project get cache, I think. And there, look at that. It is successfully downloading pre-built binaries, not just for this file that we changed, but for all of the later files in mathlib that depend on this, thereby saving us having to do any recompilation locally. And we can verify that that all worked by then typing lean project build on the command line and noticing that instead of taking half an hour, it hopefully takes more like a couple of seconds. There we go. And if we want to ask that VS Code uses those Erlings that just got downloaded, we're going to have to press Command-Shift-P or whatever that corresponds to that on another operating system. Lean restart. There we go. And that will use the Erlings, that continuous integration built for us. Great. That's all there is to it.